Elizabeth Stanton, and today I'll be giving a TED Talk presentation on influential leaders. What is it that makes someone an influential leader? When I say influential leader, why do the same names always pop into people's heads? Like Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King Jr., Steve Jobs, Adolf Hitler, Scott Sims, or Wayne Fulci. What is it that makes these leaders so interesting and, well, influential? Is it by talking really, really loud? Or is it by using a lot of props? Or is it by constantly moving back and forth? Or is it by dressing very professional and talking in an educated tone of voice and pausing at random times? Or is it by talking really, really, really quickly so that the audience really doesn't know where they're going, but they seem, oh, they know what they're talking about because they're talking so quickly and they have all this information and they're just talking and talking and rambling. Looking back, it certainly is not these characteristics that make a great leader. If anything, those characteristics are what can destroy a leader. So going back to the original question, what makes someone an influential leader? Being an influential leader, whether for good or bad, means one has the means of applying a combination of different leadership styles to force change amongst the world. Influential leaders are those who possess a very helpful set of qualities. First being vision. Influential leaders have an end vision or a goal that everything they work for goes to achieving it. Martin Luther King Jr., for example. He had a vision of a society in which race was no longer an issue in how people were treated or in how people lived their lives. Although America, or really anywhere else in the world, is not completely racism-free, King's dream and idea has stuck with the world, and most famously, his "I Have a Dream" speech. Even without forcing 100% change, his efforts have still been effective in making the world a more equal place and has helped to ensure that minorities have a voice. Another quality is being clear, consistent, and precise. When someone starts to ramble about anything, no matter the topic, people lose interest. Influential leaders are effective at making use of the term less is more. This trait demonstrates not only integrity, but also guarantees that their message is reiterated and absorbed again and again. Take Adolf Hitler. Although he had one of the worst visions to ever be implemented, it is still very clear and compelling for many German citizens, but very far from acceptable to the rest of the world. To this day, we all know what Hitler stood for and what his end goal was. He wanted an expansion of the Aryan race, and to do that, he wanted the elimination of useless individuals, which in his mind were Jews, gypsies, handicapped, the mentally and physically wounded, and many more. The reason everyone knew his stance was because he would continuously talk about it. At all of his lectures and presentations, he did not veer away from his vision, as he stayed on track and got his message across in the most effective way possible. Thirdly, along with being very good at delivering their message, influential leaders are just as good at being listeners. It is easy to make someone do as you say, but that doesn't make you a leader, that makes you a bully. Influential leaders invite contributions and ideas towards their original vision, and it is in this method that people do not feel obligated to do as they say, but are rather eager to. Many leaders try to avoid emotional connections, but some of the best leaders know how to empathize and make themselves approachable to those who need attention. Bill Clinton and Ronald Reagan, two of the most memorable presidents of the United States, excelled at this. Bill Clinton especially was able to practice this trait. He was known to say, "I feel your pain," to the audience, and he was known to show it as well. He understood the needs and challenges of the media and of his voters, because after all, relationships are the heart of public relations. Similar to being empathetic and a good listener comes the quality of kindness and optimism. Not all of the influential leaders have practiced this, but some of the best have. One of whom was Nelson Mandela. One of the greatest leaders of all time, Nelson Mandela helped to unite South Africa as it dismantled the cruel system of white minority rule. Nelson Mandela lived in a prison cell for 27 years, and every day would spend his days breaking apart rocks in the blazing sun. Life dealt him a terrible set of cards, yet Nelson Mandela was known for his smile and humble sense of humor. He had a vision that saw past the struggles and pain, and he was convinced that one day the best parts of humanity would prevail over the worst. He approached life with optimism and kindness, and in return goes down to be one of the most influential leaders of all time. Sorry, let me just finish up this text on my iPhone and send. Okay. Oh, that's ironic. The next trait I'm going to be talking about is adaptability. Influential leaders know that while they still believe in the same thing, their surroundings are constantly changing. One to especially implement adaptability is the one and only Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was fired from Apple at the age of 30 for not being empathetic enough. He was known to be too focused on his work and not spending enough time connecting with his surroundings. His vision remained the same, but to be absorbed and listened to by people, he needed to change. So, 12 years later, Steve Jobs returned to Apple only to produce their most successful creation ever, which is the iPhone. Finally, and arguably the most important quality of good influential leaders is that of confidence. Confidence plays the largest role in leadership. You can teach a future leader to have a vision, to be clear, to be empathetic, to be kind, and to be adaptable, but they won't be able to be successful in any of these areas without believing in themselves. Francisco Deo says, "Self-confidence is the fundamental basis from which leadership grows. Trying to teach leadership without first building confidence is like building a house on a foundation of sand. It might have a nice coat of paint, but it is ultimately shaky at best." Being confident does not mean being overly aggressive or being unbelievably cocky. It simply means believing in oneself. When someone believes in themselves and what they are saying to be true, those who they are saying it to are much more likely to have trust in them. All the influential leaders that I have spoken about in this presentation were not given a plan on how to be successful. They all started with little to no audience, but they practiced what they believed in, and they believed in themselves. With the ripple effect, it was not long before each of these leaders were to be recognized globally for what they stood for. There are far more influential leaders than those I just spoke of today. At the end of the day, as I mentioned earlier, being an influential leader means implementing change amongst the world, no matter how large the change may be. So, with the self-confidence, motivation, and combination of traits I spoke of today, what is stopping you from being the next renowned influential leader of our time?